housing theory, and planning and policy housing. His research field is related to the field of housing, and specifically housing for low-income groups living in cities, consumer education, sustainable consumption, the concept of zero waste, and road safety and social problems. He has been the former head of Department of Resource Management and Consumer Studies, Deputy Dean of Academic and Internationalization, Head of SCORE, a research center of excellence in sustainable consumption at the Faculty of Human Ecology, UPM, as Deputy Dean of Graduate at the Faculty of Human Ecology, and also former Dean of Faculty of Ecology in 2018 to March 2021. Outside the university, he has been actively involved with the Malaysian Association of Family and Consumer Economics, or MACFEA, as EXCO, Deputy President, and previously served as MACFEA President from 2016 till 2020, and also Editor-in-Chief for Mesh Cafe Journal, a referee journal published by MACFEA until 2018. He is also member of IAPS, International Association of People Environment Studies. Professor Dr. Ahmad Hariza Hashim has been appointed as one of the Board of Trustees to MPOCC, Malaysian Palm Oil Certification Council, from early 2016 to early 2018. Treasurer to IKRAM Academia, committee member for neutral certification by Malaysian Palm Oil Board, MPOB. Now, without further delay, I present to you Honorable Professor Dr. Ahmad Hariza Hashim, who will be speaking on post-COVID-19 consumer behavior and sustainable consumption. Please give a round of applause for Professor Dr. Ahmad Hariza Hashim. Prof, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Doris. Thank you, Doris. Thank you for the introduction. Yang berbahagia, Professor Dr. Laili Haji Paib, President of Malaysian Consumer and Family Economics Association. Yang berbahagia, Professor IR Dr. Ujang Sumarwan, President of Asian Association for Consumer Interest and Marketing. Fellow keynote speakers, yang berusaha Dr. Dwi Lisya Wardani, or I've seen here is Dr. Dani, Acting Deputy for Population Control, National Population and Family Planning Board of Republic of Indonesia, or short form BKPN, yang berusaha Mr. Amir Hamzah Karim, Vice President of Dewan Perniagaan Melayu Malaysia, yang berusaha Dr. Bayu Krishnamurti, President Commission PT Raja Wali Nusantara Indonesia, yang berusaha Dr. Syamsul Azhari Zainal Badari, the Chairman for MACFEA and AACIM International Conference 2021, yang berusaha Dr. Ganjar Chandra Primananto, Co-Chairman of MACFEA AACIM International Conference 2021, committee members of MACFEA and AACIM International Conference 2021, members of MACFEA, members of AACIM, Professor, Doctor, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful. So I would like to start my speech by stating my gratitude and thanks for the invitation. Actually, it is a great pleasure to be invited and share my thoughts about consumer in Malaysia, especially during and I couldn't say it after, but in the midst of after COVID-19 pandemic. I actually, I feel small when being asked to give a keynote speech in this conference, because we have two great people together with us today, who have a lot experience in consumer. There's Prof. Ujang and Prof. Dr. Laili. But when I asked why and what topic should I give for as a keynote speech, they said it's up to you. So since Dr. Doris did mention earlier that used to be the head for a research research excellence center for sustainable consumption, and also there's like a passion for that topics, because if you look at my areas in housing, but then the sustainable consumption is something that is my passion. I would like to see something changes in the world and also amongst the consumer. So but my keynote speech will be around the post-COVID behaviors and consumptions, sustainable consumption. I will share my slide. Yes, yeah. Okay. The title of my topic will be Consumer Post-COVID-19 Behavior in Sustainable Consumption. I will start with this quotation first. So as the mask come off, what I look forward to most of all are your smiling faces. So I think that is what we are doing now. Because once we put our mask, we couldn't know whether we are smiling or not, except for the movement of the eyes. And then we just assume that they are smiling. But then when we start to take off our mask, then we know that. And hoping that this smiling will still continue, because as we all know that many of us face during this COVID-19, there are many sad moments, etc. That many of us face. We lost some closest to us, and then we face we are facing the difficulty of moving because of the restricted movement, etc. So all that problem should be not be left behind, but should be we should move forward, and whatever the positive outcome coming up from that situation, we could make sure that is for the benefit of all. And also the second quotation is that could it be that the COVID pandemic is showing us what essential for a healthy economics and planets? So that could be one of the reasons that could be the benefits, not the benefit of COVID-19, but the outcomes of what we have experienced from the we call it the pandemic, that the positive aspect that we help through. Will help us to go through in our life. So in my speech, I will talk about COVID-19 and impacts in general. Then I think I need to go to a little bit of definition of consumer, and then I will talk about COVID-19 and consumption behavior. And then later on, I will talk about the Malaysian issue and challenges, and just a little bit on what are the situation in terms of the new Malaysian consumer policy. I'm not going to go into detail about the new Malaysian consumer policy because it's not yet been approved. It's just a very draft write-up or discuss. Write up. So then what I will share is just a little bit on just a brief picture about the new Malaysian consumer policy. Okay, we start that when the first wave of pandemic COVID-19 swept across the country in the early 2020s, all of a sudden, so our behavior was forced to change. Some of us, we can see that many consumers started to buy, piling up the necessities. I still remember when the next day when the government announced that they're going to be a lockdown or restricted movement, you can see that many people are queuing up in the supermarket to buy basic necessities. So they started to piling up. This one, the first changes of behavior. And then buying in panic. You can see that people are stocking up. In the West, especially, they're stocking up the tissue. And then later, when the lockdown prolongs, we can see that the changes. The people start to buy online, as mentioned by our president, MACFEA president in the opening speech just now. So and majority of their buying is on ready-made foods and health products. You can see that we are looking at even the choice of product also have changed. So even during celebration, we have two occasions where we celebrated just within the family. They did not buy any new clothing, which is in my life for 60 years and close to 60 years already. So every time if we wanted to celebrate Eid or Hari Raya, we buy new clothes. But the last 2 years, there's no new clothes. And also we buy less celebration cookies. So that is among the consumer. But then even the company also need to transform their business model from offline to online. And many apps and business platforms are introduced. And you can see that platform like Lazada, Shopee, in Malaysia, I'm talking about in Malaysia, Lazada, Shopee, Mudah.com, 11 Streets, Lelong, Zalora, Carousel, EasyBuy, EB are among popular platform among consumer, especially in Malaysia. So while the government adjusts the regulation, so another party, the government will do that. What they did is adjust the regulation due to all these changes, especially in protecting the population due to the increase, and also protecting the consumer, especially due to the increase in participants by both the consumer and business community in the e-commerce transactions. As you can see, even when during the increase in online, also followed by increase in online cheating, etc. So consumers are deeply concerned about the impact of COVID-19, both from health and economic perspective. Different peoples are facing different impacts for both the health and also economics. In general, after from the reading that I've done, in general, I found out that there are two categories of people when facing this pandemic in the long run. For those who have stable income, they will end up with higher saving because they are not able to spend their money, and they are eagerly waiting to spend their money, especially for traveling or holidaying, once the pandemic is over, or when there is no longer restricted movement enforced. While for those who didn't have a stable jobs, they could lose their jobs and will later affect their daily expenditures. So these are the people who will be facing a hard time during and after the pandemic. So different peoples are responding in a variety of ways and different attitudes, behaviors, and purchasing habits. Many are trying to improvise and learning new habits. I will come to that later. So as the world began to recover slowly from the COVID-19 crisis, it is clear that the period of lockdown has had a profound impact on how people behave, especially in the market. The period of isolations, economic uncertainties, the contagion of the COVID-19 will change consumer behavior, and in some cases for years to come. In the early stage of this pandemic, as mentioned earlier, for those who are worried about the contagion of the COVID-19, start to stockpiling basic goods, looking for values and trusted brands, and cut back on buying clothing and consumer electronics and started to buy online. After some time, consumer is spending less money and more online. Consumer also are shifting their loyalty both in brand and channels as they are willing to try new products and new ways to shop. So what can be expected from the continuous lockdown and restricted movement due to the pandemic has accelerated a long-lasting change in consumer behavior rather than having simply created a temporary phenomenon. So how does all this related with sustainable consumption? I will come to that later. So many studies have shown that there are changes during the pandemic, and many also predicted that these changes will continue even when the pandemic is no longer here, hopefully. While there might be many pandemics to compare on what experience currently, however, if you look back at history, there are some events that have impacts on the consumer daily life. For example, during the years 13th centuries, the Black Death in Europe, which killed 25 to 13 million people. It was credited by historian with ending of feudalism, restructuring of the society around the relationship that were derived from holding of land in exchange for service and labor and serfdom. That the new goals of rational humanity were happiness, knowledge, and freedom. This pandemic that during that time created a new values where people are more focusing on happiness, knowledge, and freedom. And also the changes in the constitution of government and the separation between the religions and the state. The Spanish flu in 1918, which took 15 to 100 million lives. Afterward, many governments socialized healthcare for all. While the United States initiated employer-based insurance plan, the other countries they started to recognize the need to coordinate public health, especially at the international level. And during the World War II, 1939 to 1945, where you can see that women has stepped up to take many of the jobs that used to be done by the male. When the men went to war, and there's the shortage of workers, so the ladies come forward and did all of this work. So now there's no longer issue of gender. So also that September 11th World Trade Center attacks, which reshaped the transportation and security policies worldwide. I think all of us experience this when we travel, where we can accept the higher level of screening. At least for the male, we have to take off our shoes. Sometimes we have to take off even our belt. Then we have to hold our trousers to make sure that it doesn't go down. So that's what. But they still accept it. Why? Because of the issue of security. So people accepted this high level of screening and surveillance, so in the interest of collective security. So many of our toiletries to this day are thrown out from the airport. I think I remember when I come back, when I was traveling into Australia, so I bought bottles of, I think it's like a cheese in a bottle, and I've forgotten that I supposed to put it in the luggage, but I put it in my carry bag. Then at the checkpoint, when they scan it, and then they found that bottle, they take it out and throw it away. So that's that. But then we accept it. So some airport make you take your shoes, and some don't. Many of us still confused by the rules 20 years later. But these rules and heightened security overall have made flying much more safer and secure as compared to riding a car. So these are the changes that consumer face, experience, and accept as the norms. We don't question. We accepted it as a necessity. We accept it as required because of the reason behind it. And I think it goes with pandemic. But before we go into detail on this consumer post-COVID-19 behavior, let's first have a common understanding on what is consumer. So the United Nations Guideline on Consumer Protection outline various fundamental rights of consumer, and often used as example for the enactment of consumer regulation, meaning that many countries will refer to UNGCP as a guideline. So under the UNGCP, United Nations Guideline for Consumer Protection, the term consumer was referred to natural person, regardless of nationality, acting primarily for personal, family, or household purposes. So however, number states may use different definition based on the domestic need of those countries. It depends on the country. But I think the some of the countries just adopt whatever proposed by UNGCP for their when they wanted to define consumer. For example, I quote a few examples. United Kingdom, for example, in Consumer Rights Act 2015, United Kingdom, an individual acting for the purpose those who are wholly outside the individual trade, business, or profession. So Indonesian law number 8 on consumer protection 1999, individual use goods or services available in society for the benefit of themselves, family and other peoples and other living creatures which are not for trading. And for Malaysia, we based on our definition by Consumer Protection Act 1999, which define consumer as individual that uses goods or services of the type commonly obtained for the purpose and not obtaining or using such goods or services or presenting themselves as acquiring using such goods or services primarily for the purpose of supplying them back by trade, use it in the course of and manufacturing processes. In the case of good, repairing or reworking by trading other goods or features on the ground. So in summarizing all this definition, we can conclude that the individual who buy goods and services in the final form for his or her own use, for the household use, or for the use of the family members, or for a friend, without the intention of doing businesses. So that one is the definition of consumer. I think we have to have that in our mind when we talk about consumer. When we talk about the consumer behavior, referring to this group of people, which mainly that many of us. So what did they do actually? I think that's a common question. What do consumer do? Actually, I would like to thank my colleague Dr. Sharifah for her slide. This is her slide actually that I used for my class. So what do consumer do? What consumer do actually? So that if you look at the slide, it shows that the main activities is consumption. What is consumption then? So which is the main activities that the consumer did? Consumption is defined as the vital foundation for economics, as well as the broader economy. The whole system of reward and progress is based on consuming and producing more goods and services. Throughout the economy, consumers decide which product to consume based on the price of the good, the availability of goods, and their own need and want. Consuming means to use up goods and services. The behavior involved in consumption is purchase, the acquisition, which in the slide will show purchasing, use, which include storing, giving, and also and the last one is disposal or discarding. So, and why consume? So the question now is why we consume? So the answer is that because why consumer do what they do? The purpose of consumption activities is because of we want to achieve well-being. That one is that to fulfill the needs and to achieve well-being. So the above, that is what the main aims, the output of consuming goods and services is so that we can achieve our needs, our wants, and at the end of the day we can achieve our quality of life. So, however, the above explanation is very much from the economic perspective. The achievement of needs and wants with the intention of achieving well-being or good quality of life does not mean that consumer can consume as they like, whatever they like, without any control. So the consumptions need to be in control, be it by the rules and regulation introduced by the government or through self-control. It needs to be controlled. Why? Because so it does not jeopardize the next generation. Therefore, sustainable consumption is an important activity. As the G12 goals emphasize on ensuring reasonable consumption and product patterns. So it is important activities, it is important goals that they are very much focusing on the sustainable consumption. So the question is, what is sustainable consumption? So the use of goods and services to meet needs toward achieving a better quality of life while minimizing the use of natural resources, toxic substances, and the production of waste and pollution, so as not to jeopardize the needs of future generations. all consumption is location, and I need to remember consumption is location and time bound. Consumer develop habits over time about what to consume. This is true for shopping, searching for information, and post-consumption, which involve waste disposal. While consumption is habitual, it is also contextual. There are 4 major contexts, meaning that the influence of sustainable consumption: social context, technology, rules and regulations, and the less predictable, the disasters such as earthquake, hurricane, tsunami, and global pandemic, which include COVID-19. So all these 4 contexts will influence people's consumption. So the main aims of my speech will be focusing on the post-COVID-19 consumer behavior and its impact on sustainable consumption. So how does COVID-19 affect consumer consumption? Is the consumer behaving sustainably during the pandemic? To answer all these questions, let's see what are the changes affecting consumer behavior in general. Pandemic COVID-19 actually has accelerated the pace of behavioral change around the world. How we eat, how the people work, how they communicate, how they play and learn, and this extends to the consumption patterns too, in every category, including groceries, entertainment, healthcare, and even data usage. A study done by a group of people, Pranit Yendamuri, Derek Keswa Karon, and Gwendolyn Lim, in June 26, 2020, in the article How COVID-19 is Changing Southeast Asia Consumer, analyzed the buying patterns of 8,600 consumers in 6 Southeast Asian countries, which including Malaysia and Indonesia, found out that while 47% of consumers decreased offline purchases, 30% increased their online spending. And they identify 6 emerging consumption themes with regard to the impact of COVID-19 among Southeast Asian consumers. And the themes are shown in the slide. You can see that there are 6 themes that they identify. Essentials are moving online, and the people are buying essential online. Discovery of new apps accelerators. 45% of the first one, essential, are moving online. 45% of consumers having increased online buying of groceries. 2-time increase in online penetration of essential categories. Discovery of new apps accelerate. 84% of consumers have tried new apps and are likely to continue to use it even after during the post-pandemic. Value for money is key consideration. Now people are focusing on value for money. 57 prioritize value for money in purchase. Southeast Asian consumer nearly 2 times are likely as those in US to start savings more after crisis. Reliable brands are on the rise. 40% of consumers have tried different brands. Meaning that reliable brand, they are no longer a brand. They are brand conscious, but they are not really rely on certain brand. So they are willing to change. 42% are buying more reliable brands. Health and welfare top in their mind. 73% will be more health conscious, and 54% will be more environmentally conscious. And at home and contactless here to stay. Meaning that many are prefer to work at home. 70% have increased at home habit, where Southeast Asian consumer 1.5 less likely than those in US to consume out after easing. Whether this is happen or not, but this is a study shown by done by these people. But I think in the real situation, in general, you can see people go out during the when they stop there's no longer restricted movement. But then still, the percentage as compared to the previous before the pandemic is still low. Yeah? And we look at in terms of essential are moving online. Whether they are quarantined or fearful of contact with others, consumers across Southeast Asia are spending more online. So I think more of because they are in the institution, because they're still observing on the numbers of how many are affected with COVID-19 every day, and they look, and then when the numbers is increasing, and they see that they are very careful in terms of their going out and spending outside. Therefore, they are preferring spending more online during pandemic. And then what they buy, essential goods such as fresh and or packaged grocery for many of account for many of their purchases. So having shifted online, many anticipate that they will continue relying on e-commerce after the crisis end. Roughly 83% of those shopping online say they are likely to continue their increased spending online after restrictions are restricted. This can be seen in this slide. Consumer make dramatic shift to online. You see that there's the numbers. Again, and then the second one, the second discovery of new apps. Southeast Asia consumers have never been shy about trying new apps. The Philippines is the world leader in volume of text messaging. Jakarta has traditionally sent more tweets than New York, Tokyo, London, or Sao Paulo. The pandemic has opened the region consumer to more options. For example, 28% of respondents try a new e-commerce app, and 27% try a new digital payment app. So they are more digital savvy now. They are using even the payment. They are adopting the digital payment apps. 77% of the survey digital consumer tried a new app that they plan to continue using after post-COVID-19. So this focused interest in digital option could cut across the age groups and has caused companies to respond. For example, more consumer using social media apps, social commerce is flourishing. The third, value for money, is a key consideration. Facing economic uncertainty, digital consumers now are more thoughtful about the purchases that they make. As they stockpile or plan for unstable future, they know what they want to buy, and are turning their back on splurges and impulsive spending. So meaning what meaning that they are no more, they do, before they go do shopping, they plan. So value for money is a key purchase criteria for 57% of Southeast Asian consumers. And every 60% of the region digital consumers say they plan to save more money in the future. That is twice than what the consumer in American will do. The fourth, reliable brands are on the rise. Southeast Asian digital consumer have always open to try new brand, with purchasing habits largely inspired by openness to digital discovery. Consumer nowadays are buying and showing a strong preferences for trusted and established brand. Availability across channel is important. And also the consumer now is willing to change brand, and they are willing to change to brand where they know that the company and industry that produce that particular brand are environmental friendly. So the consumer believe that they have already played their part in helping to protect the environment by buying this type of products. Can show you the slide saying that it's value for money. You see that 40% of Southeast Asian consumers have tried different brands, and you see that Malaysian, they are not a percentage of respondents who tried different brands. All the Asian countries, Malaysia and Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore is higher than what consumer as compared to consumer in the United States or in China. So all of this actually has much impact to the sustainable consumption, because you can see that they are willing to change brand, but they are no longer brand loyalty. As long as they consider that brand that they are going to buy is social responsible companies and environmental responsible company, then they don't mind buying from that. They don't mind changing the brands. Okay, so the figures shows that consumer in Southeast Asia are not that brand loyalty during the COVID-19, as long as the product are goods, reliable, can satisfy their needs, reasonable price, and environmental friendly. It will be their choice. So while purchases are currently centered on the most basic needs, people are shopping more consciously. Another issue, another behavior. They are now shopping more consciously. They are buying locals. They are embracing digital and sustainability. The issue on sustainability is about changing the attitude toward the environment, health, and wellness, and it involves the whole consumer generation. Even if sustainable consumption might require a price premium, but still many are willing to pay for it. This kind of perception among the consumer could also happen because of the pandemic. In China, for example, COVID-19 has led consumers to reassess their personal value and priority, where there is an increase in awareness of physical and mental well-being, and also growing sensitivity towards environmental wellness. The outbreak has pushed consumers out of their normal routines. Consumers are adapting new habits and behaviors that many anticipate will continue in the long term. Many of the consumers state that their value has changed. What are the changes occurring among the consumers? Many consumers were already favoring products that are aligned to with their sense of purpose, such as protecting the environment. Now they're even more committed to consume in a purposeful way, and many are adopting this value for the first time. So all these changes will have a pivotal impact on consumption patterns and consumer identities in the next few years to come. The study done by Accenture in April 28 in their report, How Consumer Behavior Will Be Changed, stated that the virus has accelerated three long-term trends among consumers in Southeast Asia. What have been mentioned earlier is that there are changes happening in the world before the pandemic. People are moving towards environmental friendly goods, but the changes is very slow. But pandemic, the situation during the pandemic has accelerated all these changes. So Accenture come up with three trends among consumers in Southeast Asia. The ever-increasing focus on health, as we have early mentioned, agreed upon, that health and welfare has been in their top of their mind. Consumers are more aware on the importance of their wellness, and also consumers recognize the services available in telemedicine and digital health. And when asked to prioritize their purchasing criteria, 39% of digital consumers in Southeast Asia cited health and wellness as their top priority. And the second one is a rise in conscious consumption. Consumers are more mindful in what they are buying now. They are striving to limit food waste, shop more cost consciously, and buy more sustainable options. Brands will need to make this a key part of their offer. If not, then they might be left behind, or the products may be left behind in the supermarket, even it is a well-known brand. So figures, I've forgotten to show the case. So figures below show that top of the four is all about sustainable consumption, limiting food waste, shopping more health conscious, making more sustainable choices, and shopping more cost consciously. So you can see that consumer, the rise in conscious consumptions among consumers in Southeast Asia. And the last one mentioned by Accenture is that it's growing love for local. So the desire to go local, the desire to shop local is reflected in both the consumer products and the way they shop. So this again will help to ensure that the less traveling, less logistic movement, etc. So, and the last, as mentioned by the last study done by the I've mentioned earlier, is about at home and contactless here to stay. So eliminating hours-long commutes from daily schedule has boosted productivity, and also less traveling, meaning that less pollution, etc. Less traveling means less traffic jam, less carbon monoxide emitted to the air, means less pollution. That is why clear sky, especially in the urban area, can be seen clearly during the long period of lockdown. So meanwhile, in general, consumers in South Asia are embracing innovative contactless services. Even in Southeast Asia cash dominant market, for instance, contactless payment platform have achieved high growth, both in transaction volume. So how does all this relate? So before we can go into the explaining about the relationship between post COVID-19 behavior changes, the changes in the behavior and sustainable consumption. So what I'm showing you now is that this is the vicious circle of consumption. This is what happening during before the pandemic, where people do their shopping. So you can see that that how our needs been created and how the industry try to fulfill our needs and demands, and what happened to the earth after that. So this circle of consumption need to be disrupted. Need to be disrupted. Why? Because of we don't want our generation to suffer. So if you look at this diagram, it started with the green earth, where people we are living in it, and we have needs and demand. At first, the industry tried to meet the demands, and later they created the demands for the consumer. The consumer got the product from the market, and we bought it, bring it home, store it, and later consume it. After some time, discarded the product. So when producing the product, the resources for the product were extracted from the earth, and when producing it, the waste produced from the productions were later dumped to the environment. The consumer also, after using, will also dump their waste to the earth or to the environment. So the world will be facing a hard time to replace the resources, and at the same time having to collect all the waste. So the result, the world might not be able to handle all this, and then our future generation might not be living in a green and a safe environment. This is what happened currently, and even though the awareness about the world sustainability is already there, but the pace is not fast enough to help save the world. It needs to be disrupted. This vicious circle needs to be disrupted. And the changes in the behavior of the consumer, as I mentioned earlier, the long-lasting changes expected from the pandemic COVID situation could help delay the process of destroying the earth. So in the earlier discussion, the six themes and also the three themes that I've mentioned earlier, in the earlier discussion, we detected several positive changes highlighted among consumers during the pandemic. So I mean, it should be disrupted as shown in these figures. That meaning that after this, the behavior of the consumer should be in this purpose. I'll come to back later to this slide. So among the positive behavioral changes detected, more thoughtful in their buying behavior, becoming more purposeful in their purchasing behavior, turning their back on splurges and impulsive buying, emphasizing value for money environment, can switch brand easily as long as the product is of certain quality. The producer show more concern toward the society and the environment, emphasizing on the new right, that is right to repair, willing to pay extra for sustainability, shopping more consciously, embracing digitals and sustainability, willing to reassess personal value to set with priorities where there is increase in awareness of physical and mental well-being, growing sensitivity toward environmental wellness, limiting food waste, making sustainable choice and more cost consciously, growing love for local products, less traveling, less carbon release to the environment, prefer and accept the new norms of working, shopping, and learning from home. All these are some changes believed to be detected from the previous studies, and many believe that this is going to be maintained, these changes, even after the period of pandemic COVID-19. So if all this behavior, then it can disrupt this circle of consumption, vicious circle of consumption, and people can act like this type of movement, where they still acquired, they use the disposal, but they did it with very consciously, with the purchasing decision, etc., and also with all this in their mind, their disposal in their mind. Okay, it's already 12:30. I think I'll say a little bit more about Malaysian. I'm not going to go into the whole of the slide by then. So this is what are the Malaysian facing now during the pandemic, Malaysian consumer issues and challenges. So some of it is quite general, but there's some of it quite related to what happened during the COVID-19. The first is on outreach of consumer education program. During the COVID-19, we believe that many, especially on the consumer education in terms of digital, they need to be educated. The curriculum need to be looked back and look at it, because the situation has changed tremendously and very fast. So this one is the outreach of consumer education program, and it need to outreach to the whole population. So in the digital world, changing toward digital e-commerce, there might be left behind. So it shouldn't, especially in the rural area, the elderly, that all that should be taken care into consideration when doing consumer education programs. The third one is transparency of e-commerce platform providers. So the one is the issue of transparency of e-commerce platform providers in terms of information delivery and action taken in e-commerce transaction need to be addressed. This is because of the raw material cost, the role of middlemen, shipping costs have been increased in the price of goods. So in this regard, the government need to monitor the market, the activities of e-commerce platform providers, and the price of goods sold online more comprehensively and effectively to ensure consumer safety and environmental balance. Quality and dumping of product option in the market because of online and globalization. People buy no longer. You can buy throughout the world. We said that's why you need to control in terms of the quality and the dumping of product. Consumers are exposed to the dumping of product and services in the market. The quality of the good offered is an issue when consumers make purchases online and deal with obviously industry players that are very hard to track. So in addition, the increase in the amount of waste as well as the sharp increase in the use of plastic in the packaging and delivering of online purchases can affect the environment. And then the physical and mental health. This is about facing. So the COVID-19 pandemic and the prolonged movement control orders pose a wide range of physical and mental health problem of consumer. So at the same time, the issue of escalation price of goods and foodstuff that are not commensurate with the incomes of consumer household have resulted in the survival of low-income consumer being affected. And number 5 on the political, economic stability and the changes in the global climate. So Malaysians are facing this nowadays on political and economic stability, and this also influence what is happening in Malaysia, and also during while we are facing the pandemics. So this is again things that need to be need to be looked into when devising a policy. So I think I shaped because already 12:35. I think I go to this. I'm not going to talk about this. I'll go into this. Okay, the Malaysian policy that we have mentioned earlier. So we did a study, not a study. We were commissioned to do something for the Malaysian consumer policy. But then part of when we try to come up with this new Malaysian consumer policy, we look at what are the perspective of the three main players in the market. And one of the questions that we ask is about whether COVID-19 has any effects on the consumer. And also we are also referring to one of the other policy introduced by the EU, because among the policy, the current policy, that really when they introduced they tackle the issue of COVID-19 is what introduced by EU. And for Malaysian in general, there are three important foundations that we are focusing on the national consumer policy, which are the backbone of the core that's been identified to achieve the mission and vision that's been set, namely consumer of the national national consumer and the national prosperity, the pillars, and then consumer, industry, and government collaboration, and also the sustainable consumption. And the five costs in discussing about the national economic policy will be focusing on strengthening governance, empowering consumer, cultivating sustainable consumption, ensuring a fair market, and lastly, digitalization of consumer. The hope is that through the National Consumer 2.0 policy, that the well-being of consumer will achieve in an inclusive consumer ecosystem through a fair, safe, and sustainable market. That's about all that with regard to summarizing on the Malaysian new Malaysian consumer policy. And actually, before that, we have mentioned about the issues and challenges. What are the views of those three main players about COVID-19 and the roles of other issues that need to be included in developing or in coming up with the new consumer policy. However, this is the main important point that we can conclude about the new policy. One is on the national prosperity, and then the consumer, industry, and government collaboration, and the sustainable environment, and with the five cores. So I think that's about all for my speech. And lastly, be the change that you wish to see in the world. So that's all that we need to do this. We are the key. We are the consumer. We need to play our roles. We need to be proactive, and we need to change. And we are in control. Then we can do this. Thank you very much. Back to you, Dr. Doris.
Siapa? Oh, udah latihan dulu dah. Saya itu soalnya nggak kurang itu kemarin tuh kurang.
Thank you, Dr. Doris. Back to you. Finish already.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ahmad Hariza Hashim, for elaborating on post-COVID-19 consumer behavior and sustainable consumption. You have also given clear plans, guidelines for moving forward. And this has been very important and also very detailed. And I hope that everybody will take heed of what is the challenges and how to move forward. Please give a round of applause for Professor Dr. Ahmad Hariza Hashim. And now back to you, MC Nur Shaza Akila. Thank you for this keynote session too. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Doris Patmini as Sumarwan and both speakers for a very exciting talk. It is very nice to see all of you once again, and we hope you have been enjoying yourself at the conference so far. We will have a lunch break and we'll come back to the parallel session of conference at 2 p.m. Malaysia time. To all presenters, please stay within the same link and you may click on the assigned breakout room. If any problem occurs, please share in the chat box. For all participants, you may also choose the topic of your interest in today's presentation. There are 5 available rooms for the family and consumer economics sub-team. For further details, you may also check on the screen in this room and the program books. And before we break for lunch, I would like to share the tentative for the second day of our conference. For the next morning on 17 November 2021, the program will be start at 9 in the morning. Then, the conference will be continued with third keynote speech that will be delivered by Mr. Amir Hamzah Karim, Vice President Malaysia Chamber of Commerce Malaysia, and the fourth keynote speech will be delivered by Dr. Bayu Krishnamurti, Chair of Commissioner PT Raja Wali Nusantara Indonesia. The parallel session for business and management sub-team will be followed in the afternoon.
Berapa orang
Then the
namanya?
closing and award ceremony
orang?
will be at 4 in the evening. Distinguished guests,
Oke.
participants,
Nah,
ladies and
yaudah,
gentlemen,
nanti
we really
saya akan
appreciate
ngasih
your
tugas ke
attendance
Lutfi ya.
and support to this
Nah,
conference. We hope you will stay with us
dari
until
kelas
tomorrow
sekolah mana?
event. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that
Oh
wraps
gitu.
our morning. On behalf of the organizer,
Berarti
Malaysian
ya
Association
besok
of
itu
Consumer and Family
ngasih
Economics
tutorial
MACFEA
mengenai Zoom
and
biar tahu
Asian Association
Lutfi
of
hadir
Consumer
gitu.
Interest and Marketing AACIM, thank you for making time in your busy schedules to join us here this morning. It's been our pleasure to host this conference. I would like to apologize for any
HP-nya
inconvenience
diinstal
occurs
dulu
throughout the
semua.
event.
Internetnya kan pakai kita nggak ada
Hopefully,
masalah. Jadi
everyone will
biar
be gain insight from the output
dia tahu.
throughout today's conference. Please have a nice lunch, and you may return for the parallel session at 2 in the evening. I end my duty as Master of Ceremony for today's event with Wabillahi Taufiq wal Hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.